he always told me, never, if you're going to become a doctor, never become a family medicine doctor. He's like, we're the hardest working doctors and we're the least paid. I'll never forget him telling me that when I was probably like 13.
This is gonna hurt. It's time for the Suffering Podcast. Society teaches us from a young age that our life is laid out in some imaginary timetable, from finishing our schooling to finding our life's career, then eventually having a family. Our destiny is written by others, leaving us with only the illusion of choice. Further down the road, we see the outcome of a well-planned life, taking a career outside of our education, failure upon failure, and the family life being broken into bits. This journey had a very clear path, but came with no GPS and no instructions. There are guides placed in specific positions that have a manual to assist us in getting what we desire. They are holding the guiding light and know the way. We have to learn to follow. We must be willing to take the assistance and do the work. I'm Kevin Donaldson, always here with Mike Falaise. Mike DePalma is sitting in tonight, and welcome to the Suffering Podcast. If you're a fan of overcoming adversity and overcoming suffering, then we're for you, because that's what we do here, and that's the stories that we highlight. So do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, please comment, ring the bell so you can get notified of all of our new content. Now you can join. Follow us on all social media so you can find out exactly what we're up to. I wanted to give a big, quick mention. This is the first recording without my brother, my dear friend, and my business partner, Mike Falaise. I miss you, brother. You're always going to be in this studio. You're always going to be right here on the table. I love you forever, and I'm sorry you left us so early. On this episode of the Suffering Podcast, we welcome Suzanne Chabot to discuss the suffering, that's something that we all need, the suffering of a marriage therapist. Suzanne's traveled a long way, and listen, sometimes we need a guiding light because we don't really know. Thank you so much for coming in.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
Before we get into anything, let's throw a big shout out to our marquee sponsor. That's Toyota of Hackensack. We don't trust anybody as police, but we do trust them. So go to toyotahackensack.com and let them find you a car. So Suzanne, you've watched a couple episodes. You know that every week we take a question from our audience. This question comes from Fantasia23. How do you decompress? I pulled this one specifically for you. Listening to all those stories, because I'm actually waiting to hear how you do this, because I'm always looking for new tools. We hear some awful stuff in here, and sometimes we eat it. Sometimes we take it home with us. You do the same thing, but there's got to be a way for you to decompress. Try not to take it home. I know that's impossible. It's a tall order. So what's your trick? What's the magic formula? I need to know it.
There's no magic formula, but I would say a few things. Whenever I have the opportunity to possibly do this in between clients is I walk. I go outside and I walk, which can be hard in central New York because we don't have that much sunlight. I don't know if New Jersey is much different. It's pretty simple to ground your body in the here and now. Right?
Are you talking about the grounding techniques, or are you talking about just going out and being grounded as far as your personality?
Walking is grounding. It's
Right.
like a grounding technique. Right. So anything that kind of brings me into the here and now and is mindful, but also movement typically. So walking is a big one for me. So it's really hard. Actually, I just bought one of those walking pads. They're not a treadmill, just because it is such a challenge sometimes to just be sitting all day when it's really bad weather. I do yoga. I run. Walking with my dog is an extra comforting thing to do to decompress.
So yoga is an interesting one. So believe it or not, I have done yoga, and I am the least flexible person on the planet. I've done yoga. Yoga is the funniest thing you'll ever sit through, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. There are certain muscles that don't move that way, and it releases everything in your body. But yoga's tough, and people don't realize it. I drip sweat if I do yoga. But I can't think about anything else. It totally clears my mind and focuses me, and it's an important thing. So I like the yoga idea.
Yeah. Anything that really puts you into the here and now in the moment, because when you're reflecting back on something, that maybe like a session that I just had that was really upsetting, or somebody shared something that was really traumatic that I'm sitting with, or whatever the thoughts might be, even if it has nothing to do with a session, right? You're projecting into the future, brings you back. It's a moving meditation. Actually, it's funny that you mentioned that too, because when I was living in New York City, when I was in graduate school and getting all of my hours to do my licensure as a marriage and family therapist, I was going through a very difficult time. I was actually going through a divorce. And I took up Bikram yoga, which we're not allowed to say Bikram
No,
yoga anymore.
It's hot yoga now.
It is the classic 26, is what they call it now. But that was like my soulmate workout. I loved it. I would work all night at the hospital, and I would just go right into a 90-minute class. And even though it's the same 26 poses every single time, the same exact monologue every single time, like still felt different. Like the way whatever you were going through, whatever struggles you were going through, or how good or energetic you felt, certain positions were easier than others.
Well, conversely to that, have you ever tried like a cold plunge? Because
I have not.
So a cold plunge I've done it. I've done it numerous times. It will reset your whole electrical system. And if you want to talk about focus, because the minute you lose focus, you will get freezing cold. It's all about focus. Yeah. It's bringing the here and now. Mike DePalma, what do you think?
Decompressing. My mind travels at a high rate of speed. I'm not gonna. Believe it or not, I clean. I cook. I'm serious.
That's common.
And I'll pace around the house, and I'll actually just level out. And even if there's no one there, I'll just start cooking and cleaning and cooking. I'll just go down the block. My neighbors, hey, you need me to clean for today?
I thought it was sending me text messages about something inappropriate.
No, I don't know. I guess there's many techniques. Yoga, I could never. My mind.
You think you can
still.
Never try it?
My mind races. It's hard for me to relax. Honestly.
That's the whole point of it, though. That is.
I wish I could do that.
So where people say I'm not flexible enough to do yoga, and that is then that's why you should do yoga.
No, I agree.
So just stretch yourself through that.
I'm a person of extremes. I'm if I'm doing something, I am all in on it. Mm-hmm. So meditation, I got into meditation, especially after my shooting. And meditation really wasn't doing it for me. I found it hard because I got comfortable, and once I get comfortable, my mind wanders. So I enjoy meditation, but I have to do extreme meditation. So in the winter, I'll go out on my back deck in my underwear, and I'll sit there in the 20-degree weather, and I have to focus. It's the same thing as the cold plunge. I have to focus, and I have to concentrate on my breathing. And the minute I break concentration, this is no joke, the minute I break concentration, I will feel that cold harder than anybody. In the summertime, I do it in a sauna. I do it in a steam room. And it's different. I prefer the cold much better, but I have to have some sort of external force pressing down on me in order to clear my mind and really focus on what I want to think about. And it's worked. And I love doing it, and I don't think I'll ever stop doing it. So don't come around my house early in the morning. You're going to get a surprise.
You'll be rolling around in your undies in the snow.
That's right.
Okay.
So Fantasia 23, thank you so much for sending in your questions. Keep sending in your questions, and we will try to get them on the air. And while you're at it, go to 234 Franklin Avenue. Go see Gus at Cubita Cafe. Gus makes the most delicious food in the world. It's all handmade. It's made with care. It's made with love. And if it's not right, Gus is always going to make it right for you. I just saw him yesterday, and so go in there and tell him the Suffering Podcast sent you. I'm guarantee you're going to get something special. We just had somebody do it, and he made him something that was out of this world. So Suzanne, you traveled all this way, and you came recommended to us by a gentleman who, when he talks, I listen, and that's Dr. Maurizio Miglietta, who I just spoke with on Friday or Saturday. And he's one of those rare individuals in the world who will never steer you wrong. He's always behind you. And this is a guy who's such a high level, but he's just down to earth. I always consider him one of us. So I always listen to him. And then we spoke on the phone, and I really liked some of the things that you had to say about the methods of how you go through and run your practice. But before that, I want you to tell everybody a little bit about how you grew up.
Okay.
So Usually it's tell me a little bit about yourself, but that
Yeah.
question was too hard for people.
Is it?
Yeah, people
Yeah.
don't like to talk about themselves.
Right. It's like, where do I go with that?
Yeah.
Yep. So I grew up in central New York in a town or city called Utica, which is right smack in the middle of New York State near Syracuse.
Wasn't that where a shooting just was? Or was that Ithaca?
There's always a shooting in Utica.
I think that's where it was because
I don't know. I don't know though. I don't know what you're referencing.
There was a police shooting or it was maybe.
Oh, that was I think that was Syracuse.
No, Dr. Miggs went there and removed a bullet from a guy's head, like the guy was still alive.
Was that when he was here?
When he was here.
Yeah, there was in Utica.
That was
but recently there was a police officer. There were 2 police officers
Really?
that died, and one was. I think the shooting was in Syracuse. That was more recent though.
Yeah, so when he was here, that tells you how long ago it was. He's telling me all about it. I'm like, holy cow! And then he had to go perform surgery at night, so he's here dressed to the nines. So
I'm not in a suit today.
So Utica, New York.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever been there. With nice neighborhoods.
Probably. Yeah, it's a nice small city.
But you said there's a lot of shootings there. What is that all about?
I mean, I think that I don't know the numbers. I couldn't give you statistics, but it happens. There's shootings. Yeah, in certain areas.
Wow.
There's good areas. There's a lot of suburbs. And then the surrounding area is a lot of rural farm. So it is a nice place, actually, to raise a family. I don't want to make it sound like we live in a ghetto. The whole city is a ghetto, because that's not true. But there are shootings. So
any inner city's got its parts.
as does Syracuse, as does Buffalo.
Everyone.
But my parents were not from Utica. My parents are transplants. So they are from New England. My mom is a nurse, and she met my dad. He's a physician, a family medicine physician, and they met over actually a trauma patient. He was a medical student, she was a nursing student, and they had a patient that was running from the police that jumped out of a window into a dumpster, and he broke like a million different bones. I don't know everything, but he was in the ICU, and they shared this patient, and that's how they met. So my father decided to do his residency in Utica, New York at St. Elizabeth's Hospital. He visited during a snowstorm, and he liked to ski. He's from New Hampshire, so that's how he chose Utica, and he never left.
That sounds like the beginning of a great love story novel. It really does. So here's this guy with multiple broken bones and eyes lock and sparks fly, and it sounds like somebody that's in our control room
like
right now.
General
It's the same
Hospital.
thing. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's a soap opera.
And my mom comes from a very conservative Italian, like stereotypical family in East Longmeadow, Massachusetts, which is near Springfield, Massachusetts, Western Mass. And my dad is from New Hampshire, a tiny, tiny town called Wilton. And he's from a very large family, French Canadian, very granola crunchy, very artistic, very different sort of cultures meshing together. I feel like I'm a blend of them, like a nice little balanced blend of the two of them. So she worked in maternity, and then I think she stopped working when I started school and stayed home with me. And I was an only child for almost 12 years. She had a lot of problems getting pregnant again, and with miscarriages and pregnancy losses, and finally had my brother, and I was almost 12 years old.
So your mom was a nurse before nurses were looked at the way they are now. Like when you hear nurse now, there's a certain level of prominence to it. When your mother was a nurse, and correct me if I'm wrong, but they were sort of like women become nurses, men become doctors. Was that how it was? Am I hitting that right?
I don't want to speak for her, but I feel like you are correct in many ways, especially the way nurses were expected to speak to doctors. We don't talk to one another on a first name basis.
Yeah, I never subscribed to that. Not even in the police department. Mm-hmm. But
much different.
They're like
much different culture at that point.
Candy striper, like the candy striper age.
Yeah.
So those people who got in, and the reason I bring that up is because those people who got into that profession at that time really must have loved what they did. I'm sure they made okay money, but they're not making the good money. They're not going to be able to support a family on it.
No.
Yeah. So
my father also. I mean, he went into family medicine. My father is like so old school still to this day.
Medical bag showing up at your house?
Yes, and he will give you the shirt off his back. That man amazing, eccentric and amazing. But he always told me, never, if you're going to become a doctor, never become a family medicine doctor. He's like, we're the hardest working doctors and we're the least paid. I'll never forget him telling me that when I was probably like 13.
But he also became doctors when doctors weren't. Maybe I'm romanticizing it a little bit, but long ago, doctors got into it for different reasons than they do. Fast forward 20 years or 20 years ago. 20 years ago, people became doctors in order to make a good living. Yeah, there was some civic-minded people. Yes, there was, but less and less. Because I'm going to be honest with you, we see this in the police world. When Mike and I took our jobs, we were making garbage. Nothing.
Yeah.
And now police officers, you're making really good salaries in New Jersey, making really, really good salaries. So you're getting a different type of clientele in there. It's less civic-minded. It's less duty, honor type of thing. So I love those old school people, and I'm very happy to hear your father. Is he still practicing?
He has been phasing out. So the only thing that he's been doing, he's retired from his private practice, and he was a medical director at a local nursing home in the community where he was. He actually had a practice in a very rural community called Waterville. And then he also was a faculty for the residency program with which he graduated from. So he teaches those residents still.
How long did he practice?
He graduated, he was in the residency in the late 70s and graduated in the early 80s. And then he retired from his practice like maybe 2018.
So he did it. He must have loved it. He must have loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're growing up with a mother who. See, you see what he's doing to me with the accent. See what he's doing to me.
Okay.
That's why I'm staying quiet.
A mother, a father.
Are you one of those people that you just kind of take on the accent of whoever's you're with?
I think he's infecting me like a virus. But you have a mother who's a medical professional. You have a father who's a medical professional. Is your future written?
I looked up to them. Actually, when I was a little girl, I wanted to be either a veterinarian or a psychologist.
I wouldn't be a veterinarian. Not because I love animals, and that's
why.
That's
right?
the whole reason I
Yeah.
can't be a veterinarian.
Yeah.
I think they got the. Listen, if I had to operate on a person, I'd be like, shut up, cover your mouth with a pillow until I'm done cutting you up. A dog,
I know.
or cats, not so
you.
much. I'm a dog person. Cats, they're jerks.
It can be.
They're jerks. Dogs are the best. But so you looked up to them. Is that where your career path is going?
I think that they were role models. I mean, I ended up going to undergraduate school, and I originally planned, which never goes as planned, for a neuroscience and behavior major. So that was more like just like a pre-med major. And then actually I could not even like understand calculus at all. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to do this double major because I can't even compute what this lady's talking about. And so I ended up majoring in psychology, and I was going to minor in religious studies. And I took enough classes. Like, religious studies is not just, people assume it's like you're taking classes on Christianity and that's it. But it was like philosophy courses. Like, there was a course on like the Trinity and the Matrix and all sorts of stuff, philosophy.
I started my college career in theological studies.
Did you?
Yeah.
So I took enough to double major, just coincidentally, and what I needed to, based on what I was interested in. So I double majored in psychology and religious studies. And then as I was going to school, on my breaks, I would work at a local hospital in Utica as a nurse's aide. And there were some nurses there that I really looked up to. There were other nurses that I thought were awful, and I wanted to like save the patients from them in a way.
Same reason why I stopped being a teacher. Exactly the same reason. I loved working with the kids. I did not like the other teachers. They were just awful.
Right? You're like, you want to swoop in and save. I just wanted to save these patients. So I ended up going to nursing school when I graduated from college. And I worked a year before I went to graduate school for marriage and family therapy.
That's a weird turn of events. Something happened where you pivoted that far?
That's a drastic change.
Well, I wanted to use my psychology degree in some way too. I felt like, am I going to waste this degree? Right? There was always this part of me that wanted to work in the realm of mental health too.
Yeah, so I have some
And I do have some stories about that going back into my childhood. As far as that, it wasn't like this new thing. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, this is out of nowhere.
I just have, because my degrees are in literature, all right, and I became a cop. While people say, oh, you wasted your time, I didn't waste my time. I used to write the best reports. That's true.
You can use any of these things in any way.
So even if you're
under any umbrella,
your psychology degree in the nursing field, well, your ability to see into patients is going to be far beyond what's the physical.
Absolutely.
You're going to see.
You're right.
Yeah, so
you're right. I mean, I say that all the time. When I worked at the hospital, I worked in quality and I worked in infection prevention and I worked in psych. But no, regardless of where I worked, I felt like, especially after I became a therapist and I worked in quality and I had to write up these reviews, these chart reviews, and bring them to physicians for them to review their peers and present at these physician department meetings with physicians fighting and throwing one another under the bus. And I felt like I could use my therapy experience with them, even though they didn't want to. They weren't there to change, like somebody, like a client coming in. And on the opposite end, with a client, I can use my nursing and like medical knowledge to help them, like with somatic techniques. So it's like you can use all of these things.
All these life experiences are so valuable in whatever you choose to do. You know, like Mike's a male dancer now, and his degrees serve him well.
I do have many degrees.
You do have many degrees.
I'm actually going to get another one.
Yes, I'm very proud of him for that. I'm super proud. I can't wait to release that one. But you touched on something earlier.
Yeah.
Your psychology degrees go back to something in childhood? The key component to any law enforcement officer being the best version of themselves is through education. Sherry Alsop is a leader in providing that education to police agencies, preparing them for the all too frequent dealings with sexual assault victims.
You've seen Sherry on episode 169 of the Suffering Podcast. She survived incest and almost daily sexual assault, so she comes from a place of experience and true understanding.
Sherry has the intelligence, commitment, and compassion to open the eyes of those on the front lines, while providing the tools to effectively deal with a difficult situation. Sherry's instruction comes from experience and multiple certifications.
Training with Sherry will offer on-site training, customized schedules, specialized instruction tailored from a victim's perspective.
You are going to hear Sherry's heart-wrenching but inspiring survivor story. Learn proprietary trauma-informed training techniques. Uncovered victim-centered interview methods while earning continuing education credits according to your state guidelines. To be the best, you must learn from the best. Let Sherry also guide you through the delicate cases of sexual assault from a victim's point of view.
Be a source of comfort to those victims affected by these traumatic experiences while producing a solid investigation and uncovering details that often go unnoticed.
To find out more or to contact Sherry Alsop, go to sherryalsop.com. That's SherryIeallsup.com.